Okay, so welcome to my last podcast episode for 2020, which is very exciting because I'm getting to do it in person with my beautiful friend, Laudy Cincotta, who is a building biologist. And this is a fabulous way to end the year because I haven't yet featured one of my 5 elements of even star 5-star wellbeing, which is surroundings. And building biologists are really the experts in how to have a healthy and well environment around you, healthy surroundings. So really delighted to welcome Laudy, and she has a business called Clean Fresh Group and also is a podcast host herself, so hopefully she won't think that I'm too bad at the job, but your podcast is called Healthier Homes and Living, so we'll certainly put links in the notes so people can access that if you want to get more in-depth information about all the wonderful things that building biologists can help us with. But for the moment, let's start with you and tell us a bit about yourself, why you got into building biology. What is your why for building biology?
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to sit here with someone and podcast.
It is, isn't it?
So
Zoom. Nice, I know.
So
yeah, Buddha Zoom, yeah.
So I got into building biology through my own life experiences and pretty much illness, and I think I'll go into that a bit more, but building biology is where we look at your environment, your home or workspace, and look at what it is in that environment that could be contributing to illness. So we're kind of trained to look at the hazards in your environment. We'll come in and do that. So I've done a 2-year advanced diploma, which is the only one of its kind in Australia through ACES with Nicole Bilsma, who really started the industry here on her own, through her own journey, and she's learned a lot along the way because of that. So she's a
bit of a legend.
She certainly is. Yeah. So, and her story started because, for people who don't know, she had 10 miscarriages in her home and realised that it was magnetic fields from a switchboard and poor air quality because she was living on a main road and there was a lot of diesel particulates with trucks running. So once she moved from her front room to her back room, she became pregnant.
And it was really quickly as well, wasn't it?
Very quickly.
Memory,
yeah. So it was really then that she started, because she was a naturopath. So she actually started then to understand that the environment's playing a role here. So she would work with her clients then to look at their environment. And that's really how it started.
Yep.
Building biology started back in the late 60s, early 70s in Germany.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it came about because after the Second World War, they had a huge population boom and they needed housing. So they started whipping up apartment blocks, concrete apartment blocks, very similar to what we're building at the moment with the tilt concrete slabs here that you see going up.
Yep. And
what they found was people were getting really sick and moving out of them. They couldn't live in them. And it was then Anton, I think his name's Schneider, his surname, who started to look at why these people were getting sick. And they found that it was the environment.
What illnesses were they having, and what specifically was it in the environment in that case?
Poor indoor air quality. So there was a lot of moisture because they were concrete slabs, there were little windows, hardly any ventilation, so the air quality was poor. They were in a high rise, so they were raised off the ground, so the further away from the ground, the further from the natural environment and, the electromagnetic fields that we naturally need to survive.
Yep, from the earth. Yes.
Yeah. So that was some of what they started to realise, but mainly it was the moisture and the lack of air quality, which was a really big issue.
So was it mouldy? Was it moisture leading to mould?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and I think just a disconnect from the environment.
The earth. Yeah. Isn't that so amazing? And we haven't obviously learnt from that lesson in terms of what we're building. We're starting to, yeah. But there's so much construction of high-rise still, isn't there?
There is, and, I think what we see is that there's a really big it's starting to become a bit of a wedge because you've got a lot of money at stake. So, it's not just in the pharmaceutical industry or, in the chemical industry. It's also in the building industry. There's a hell of a lot of money. And they just haven't realised yet, I don't think. I don't believe there's enough of an understanding or a care factor yet.
Yeah.
But people are realising that this is making me sick, and so there's going to have to be a shift at some point.
Yeah, there'll be enough groundswell that there will, no pun intended, groundswell, getting back to Mother Earth. So did you want to talk about your own experience with, why personally it was of interest to you?
Sure. So my first husband died 22 years ago. He had terminal cancer. He was only 32 at that stage. It was a very short diagnosis to sort of the end of his life because he was so young, and it was an aggressive cancer. And at the time, being very naive and not understanding anything about environment, we kind of went, well, we've got to do something. And my background's Lebanese, so food is really important. So that's where I started. And usually I think food is the easiest place for people to start.
For anyone to start, I agree.
So we started with food and we eliminated chemicals. We started researching, so we went organic, and actually at the time we went vegetarian and started looking at raw and just really how much nutrients could we maximise and supplements to give him, and getting him out into nature when we could, when he wasn't in hospital and that sort of thing. So that was really where my interest started in all of that. And then I just continued on over the years to look at lifestyle, and that was where we eliminated chemicals. Not that I used a lot of chemicals in cleaning my home but, everyone had Glen 20 or an air freshener or, we had no idea about the damage that it was doing. So it was eliminating a lot of that and changing over to more natural products, because knowing myself, if it's too hard, I won't keep up with it. And, I really don't want to give up things. So I decided to find alternatives that were safer. And so kind of that's where it started to lead me down this road. And I'd seen the building biology course, but just went, I don't know much about that. And I just kind of skipped over it. I wasn't ready for it at that stage. And just kept going, and I started my own cleaning business then, because the one thing, I owned cafes, and the one thing I needed help with was home. And so the cleaners that I looked at were always bringing in chemicals or wanting chemical products, and I didn't want them in the house. And also I was quite particular, and they weren't doing things up to the standards that I required or would have liked. And so, I kind of tried to work with a number of different people, and it didn't work. So I just got out of cafes and started my own.
Oh, wow. What a change.
Certainly a big change. But, that was where I moved into and put all the principles that I wanted into place. So no chemicals, using microfiber. This was going back 15 years ago, and finding the most natural options we could then, and educating my clients along the way as to what we're using, because they'd say, I can't smell bleach, but gee, that smells nice. So you kind of talk them through the options. So it's great. And that was a really interesting journey. And my partner along the way has had his own health issues. So the journey with food and looking at, so he had a stroke in his early 50s and bounced back from it, but it left him with seizures. And they were happening every 3 months. And we kind of thought, this is just not right. It's not going to help him physically, and it's just so disruptive to our business as well as everything else in life. So we just started looking again. We got really strict with food and went completely organic at that stage. And looked at supplements and supporting his body and his system, and worked with naturopaths and allied health professionals to just make sure that he was in the best shape he could be. And there was something that we just couldn't, we were missing something. So he went from having seizures every 3 months, we got it stretched out to 9 months. So he improved a lot, but there was still something in there that we were missing. And we worked out that it was wines. So,
so the preservatives in wines.
Yeah, the sulfites, So now he drinks organic, preservative-free. He has wine, or he'll have a spirit because there's no preservatives. So, and that's made all the difference.
Amazing.
It went from 9 months to 3 years without a seizure, and now the last time he had a seizure was because he had shingles and his immune system was compromised. But generally, he's great. He hasn't had any of those, so it's been controlled through environmental and lifestyle factors.
Yeah.
So that was what led me into building biology, because I was trying to clean up our environment, and I was worried about the electromagnetic fields coming off a smart meter. It was a couple of years ago.
Yep.
When smart meters,
When
there was a lot of noise about
smart
smart meters.
Yeah.
And so I rang Nicole, and she talked me into the course, and here I am.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very interesting, that point about wine, because I think a lot of people don't think about that. Like, they may, go down the path of mainly organic food, but then they will disregard the fact that wine, and, obviously neither of us are going to advocate that you're necessarily drinking wine every day. But, I mean, in some cultures it is a thing that you do have a glass of red wine every day, and there have been benefits found of that through science. But it can really make a big difference. And I noticed that myself, so it was something that I introduced, that, at home I will only have the same preservative-free organic wine. But then, you go to a friend's house or you go out somewhere and they don't have that on offer, and I just always feel so much worse for, having even, just that little, it's probably mils at maximum, wouldn't it be, of preservative, but it has a big impact, and especially when you are mainly being clean, then I think you notice it even more.
Do.
Yeah.
And that's what he found. And even, last night we were out to dinner, and he just had a gin and tonic, and they were trying to get him to have a glass of wine, and he said, no, I just don't have preservatives, because I notice that even if I have a small amount, I can feel it. Yep. So, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in the tonic water, you have to be careful to get the preservative-free tonic water.
Who knew all this
Where do you
stuff?
stop? Yeah, exactly. All right, that's fabulous. So I guess then the question for people who don't know anything about building biology other than what they've just learned from you telling us is, why, in what situations would somebody want to employ a building biologist, to use a building biologist? And I guess I know that you're going to tell us about in these kind of situations where somebody's ill and they just can't get to the bottom of what's going on, and this is the last resort of, well, I need to look at my environment. But I'd also love to hear about ways in which people can proactively and preventatively use building biology.
Yeah. I think we will move towards that in the next decade.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to, because there's just so much going on with illness. Far more young people are becoming ill, and it is because of what we have, the increase of things in our environment. So I'll go back to, where would you get a building biologist? Is that where you'd like to start?
Yeah.
So generally, a lot of integrative GPs or allied health professionals like naturopaths are aware of building biologists, and if they've worked with someone and they realise that there may be something in the environment that could be contributing to their issues, they will get them or refer them on to a building biologist. At the moment, the way it comes about is, yes, we are a last resort, because they've tried everything, exhausted all options, and then come across, could it be my environment? But I think in raising awareness, which is one of the things I want to do, and what a lot of us are doing.
Me too, yeah.
So a lot of us that have met in the low tox space, like you and I, are raising awareness about a lot of these matters. So it will become more mainstream. So generally, yes, people who are sick are the ones that search out a building biologist, and mainly at this point in time, it seems to be mould. Mould is probably the majority of the work that comes across to building biologists, only because we have an environment or homes that are tightly sealed. So the building code, the way it's written, changed a number of years ago to, the 6-star energy efficiency homes.
Yes, yeah.
And when it did that, in our old homes, and I live in a 1950s home, it's really drafty, really dusty. building materials aside, but it's never been mouldy because there is enough ventilation through that draft and airflow. Whereas our new homes are really tightly sealed and insulated really well, so it's great for energy efficiency. But what it's actually doing is the building code doesn't allow for people living in these homes. So they've pretty much written this code to make the house energy efficient. But each of us puts out 10 litres of water a day just through our breathing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot, you wouldn't think. But then we do washing, cooking, so we have a lot of moisture in our homes, and a lot of people aren't trained to open their windows and allow for cross ventilation.
Yep.
They used to in the olden days. Like my mum, our doors were always open.
Yeah.
The doors always being open and windows. And I think that was one of the reasons why health and perhaps the homes fared a lot better.
Yeah.
Whereas now mould is quite a big issue. And even in our kitchens with the exhaust fans over the stoves, they're vented into the cupboards. Most of them are not vented out of the into the roof. Yeah. And they should be vented out of the house. So there's a lot of issues, in the way homes are built that are contributing to the mould.
So is there a way so a builder's able to get around that if you used a building biologist in a construction to have an energy efficient but well ventilated home?
Absolutely.
It is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And it would be simple things like exhausting your bathroom fans and your kitchen fans outside of the ceiling.
Yep.
It would be looking at the positioning and the size of windows and allowing for airflow within the house. So you can still have an energy efficient home, but then it also, if it's built correctly and with proper building materials, so building materials that are what we call hygroscopic, which I'll use a really good example, and I've always loved this example when I learned building biology. In the Alps, in the Swiss and the Italian Alps, they've got the chalets up in the snow.
Yeah.
So those chalets are hundreds and hundreds of years old and they're made of wood, but wood is hygroscopic. It's a natural material. So when it's cold, it actually takes into account the material itself knows how to hold onto or expend moisture in the heat and the cold. So the materials that we use in our homes, if they're natural products, will breathe and take in the moisture during the cold weather and hang on to it and not allow for mould. And then when it warms up, expend it.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really interesting, but it's about understanding the building materials. So that's where if you work with someone who's specialised, building biologist who's specialised in this, to work with your architect and your builder, they'll look at the materials that are being used and give you the natural options.
Yeah.
Even things like the glues that they're using, the type of wood, the MDF and, the cheaper pressed wood products.
Yep.
They'll suggest better products that won't off-gas in your environment. So a building biologist can be really helpful during a building process.
And that's true with your furniture as well, everyone.
Yes.
You're much better off using natural products, metal or hardwood, not the pressed
not the
stuff.
manufactured wood products. Yeah, so, and they're sort of something that down the track, you would look at your furniture and what it was made of, and fire retardants on material is another thing that is a huge contributor, we know, in the indoor environment. So this is all part of I've kind of moved into air quality now.
Yeah,
but
which is your favourite topic.
Yeah. So going back to the original question, yes, mould is probably one of the biggest things that we're called in for. And people now are becoming very aware of EMFs. And
yes, I was going to say that because you did mention that briefly before. So you think people are starting to be proactive about that?
Yeah, there's a lot more people calling in wanting assessments. And I think the issue of 5G, the advertising around 5G, has highlighted a lot of the EMF or EMR, electromagnetic radiation issue. And so people are starting to make noise, and they're getting assessments done.
Yes, and we should just say, so EMF, in case anybody isn't aware, electromagnetic frequency. Yeah.
Field, yeah.
Field, okay.
And EMR is electromagnetic radiation. So they're an umbrella term.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what creates these as an issue?
Okay.
What within our homes?
So you've got your internal and you've got your external. So externally, we're talking about cell phone towers is the major source of EMF.
And can make some people very sick. So our teacher that we met, how we met through doing the low tox course with Alex Stewart, she's extremely sensitive to this and has had a big issue recently with that. And it's probably, I reckon it's something that a lot of people don't consider.
No, they don't, because we're not educated about this. So we're told it's safe. And you and I both know through studying with Alex, and I've done some studies out of the US, and pretty much the way Australia looks at it, the US is very, very much the same, is that the onus isn't on the manufacturer of a product to prove that it's safe. Unfortunately, the way that it works here for us is that we have to get sick and then prove it was that made us sick.
Yeah.
In Europe, they've got REACH. I don't know if you've heard of REACH.
No.
So REACH is a body that they have, and the Europeans are really different. And this is what I love about the Europeans, is that they won't allow a product to go out unless the manufacturer proves it's safe. So they're the total opposite of, Australia and America.
Our method. Okay.
Yeah.
So with a cell phone tower, I guess how close can you live to one and be reasonably confident it's not going to affect your health?
Each of us is different.
Right.
So it will affect different people. So Alex, for example, really, really sick, but she's quite close to a tower. In her case, the tower was concealed, which they're now starting to do. They're concealing because they're quite unsightly, like they're pretty ugly, if I must say so. And they're a blight on the landscape. So they're starting to now make them a lot smaller, and they're painting them or they're hiding them. In Alex's case, they had covered it over, so it looked like it was something on, like maybe an air conditioning unit, like a big box on the top of the building.
Oh,
but they were inside that, which is why it wasn't picked up until a building biologist came in with, equipment and tested.
Yep.
And they found the levels were really high. That's when they worked out what it was. Because everything else she had vetted, mould and building materials. So sometimes they're not cited, but on the whole you will see it. And a absolute minimum safe distance is about 400 metres, and you really don't want it in line of sight.
Right, okay.
So if it's visible, on ground level is a little bit better, but the higher up you go, sort of up towards the height of the tower, obviously
of the frequencies,
obviously it's very much higher on the second level, and that's why high rise is really notorious for being not great for us as humans, because apart from being away from the natural magnetic fields of the earth and all of that, and the issues with mould that we talked about, tilt concrete slabs, the higher up you are, the more susceptible you are to the EMFs in the air as we get higher.
Okay, wow. So is there anyone who identifies where these things are and puts them on a map that people can look up on the internet or something?
There is. I'll give you a link to this and that you can pop in the show notes, and you can pop in an address and it'll show you all the towers.
Fabulous.
Like as dot points on a map. So it's like a Google map.
Yep.
And you'll be able to see it, and it'll give you the distances. So, and that's where you would do a search and look at it, and nothing under 400 metres. Now, that's not always true. That is a rule of thumb. But I will say the house that I've just rented, and this is, it's just really interesting. So where I've rented, there is 2 towers. One's about 350 metres from me and one's just under 400 metres. But where they are, are both up on hills and I'm almost in a valley.
Right, okay.
So they actually I took measurements because I was really concerned before I rented this and thought, the house is perfect, but this isn't going to work. And funnily enough, the readings were great. So we took the house because they have no impact. So really it's all about testing it.
Yep.
Because if I went by the 400-metre rule, I wouldn't have rented the place.
Yeah, you would have just not even looked at it properly.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but generally, ideally, you would want them 400 metres away. So because I was in a ditch, or not a ditch, but on flat land and the towers were a lot higher,
right,
it was quite safe.
Okay. So, and so how do you measure that?
So we have equipment. They look like, they're about that big, and then it's got like a Christmas tree. We call it a Christmas tree nozzle thing on the end of it. They're German equipment, so there is really, really expensive equipment that people like government departments like our Panzer, who's the Australian radiation protection body that makes the rules. They've got equipment that's worth in the tens of thousands, which is not practical, and that needs calibration. So our equipment does need calibration to make sure that it's testing properly, but it's more in the sort of under 10,000 range. So professional equipment. So it is professional. There are little units that you can get under $1,000. Not as ideal, but they could be used as screening tools to just give you an indication if it may be a problem.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a really good little meter. I'm trying to think, mitometer.
Yep.
That's under 300. I think it's under 200 actually. It's not calibrated to building biology standards, but it will light up. It's pretty simple to use, easy to pop in your handbag, and take it around with you and kind of just to work out, am I being impacted?
If you're checking out new properties or something.
And if you find a high reading, you could then say, okay, I really want to buy this property or rent it, but I might get a building biologist in to do a better screening for me. Yeah. Okay. Sort of a pre-purchase or pre-lease assessment.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a proactive way that we can use building biology.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've kind of taken a bit of a detour, haven't we? What else?
Sorry. So I went off on external.
No, that was me.
But internal is where it's really important. The external does matter.
Yes.
But really, in the society that we're living in today, it's our internal habits. And if we can minimise our internal habits, then we've got a much better chance because you're sitting bathed in it in your home, whereas this tower is 400 or 800 metres away. It'll impact, but it's not as close to you. So we look at what we call long-term or latency periods. So if you're passing by a cell tower, for example, that's only transient. It's not going to affect you because you're passing, or you're somewhere that has Wi-Fi in a cafe. You're there for an hour. It's not really affecting you. But in your home, you're being bombarded 24/7 with these frequencies. And so what we find is our phones, so our mobile phones, our Wi-Fi, so our routers, mobile phone routers. I'm just trying to think. A lot of the kids, what do you call them? The Wiis and the Xboxes.
The gaming machines, consoles.
Yes, the consoles. That's the word. Thank you. I haven't had to talk about them for a
while. No.
My boys are older.
Whereas I do, yeah.
So the consoles are another area. Apple TV gives off really high readings. So these are all things that are an issue in your home, and you're with them 24/7. So most people's simple ways to reduce. Do you want me to jump into how reduce your exposure?
Yes, please. Yeah, absolutely.
So really simple. When your cell phone is with you, don't carry it on your body.
Yep.
So the closer it is to you, the higher the concentration that your body is being bombarded with.
Yep.
And so there's we were taught the inverse square law. So if you double the distance away from the source, which is your phone, so even if, especially when we're using it to our head, if you double the distance to this sort of distance, you've reduced your exposure by 75%.
Yep.
So if you keep it away from you, so with your phone, keep it off your body, so don't wear it in your pocket.
Yep.
Use earphones.
Yep.
And preferably air tube without magnets in them. I'll give you a link to that. There's a really good one that we sourced out of the US.
Oh, that's good, because I have had a pair of those and they just really were not very good at all.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
No.
okay.
These are good. You'll like these.
Okay.
So you're moving the signal away from your brain, which is really important. It's the major organs, your brain, your heart, are really important to keep it away from, keep them away from you.
And those little ear pod things are a disaster,
they
correct?
Are a disaster waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you listening, kids?
Sorry to burst everyone's bubble.
Yeah.
My son will not listen. He's 25. He won't listen. And I just keep thinking, oh my God, you've got to get rid of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because it's right next to your brain, so that frequency is literally in your ears and going
and
across
it's very
your brain.
close to the brain.
Yeah.
And the thing with using your phone is that even within Apple, many people may have heard this, it's somewhere buried in their terms and agreements and whatnot in the phone. They actually say to hold it a couple of inches away from your head.
I do remember.
But nobody knows that.
Yeah.
It's that we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But it is dangerous, and they don't know, because the latency periods for brain tumours are 15 to 20 years. Now, we've only had mobile phones for about that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, I think in the next decade is where we're going to see a real explosion so devastatingly of, a lot of cancers and a lot more illnesses, because we're not realising that these are harmful to our health.
Yep.
But having said that, I love technology and I carry it everywhere. It's just about, we can have all of this. It's just about being safe, using it safely.
Yep.
So keep it away from you. Use speakerphone.
Yes.
That makes it safe. It's not near your brain. You've got it out.
And are there any, because I know you can get little stickers and things that are supposed to protect from the EMFs. Is there anything that as a building biologist you would recommend?
We don't recommend them. We haven't tested them.
Okay, yeah.
So we can't authorise them and say, yes, they do, because we haven't tested.
Yep.
But realistically, if the sticker was eliminating the danger or eliminating the signal, you wouldn't be able to use the phone. So it's kind of a bit like, well, if I can still use my phone, then how much is it mitigating?
Yeah, sure.
So that would be the
logical.
one thing I will say about that.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you purchase, there are a lot on the market, like little covers or cases to put your phone in.
Mm-hmm.
If that phone still rings in there, that means there's a signal.
Yep.
And it's receiving a signal. So in order to make it safe, it should not receive a signal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if you want to carry it on your body or in your bag against your body, if it's in a case where it's actually shielded, that, it won't affect you, it won't ring, but if it's on your body and you're just going for a walk, you've got it with you. If you need to use it, you can, but at least if it's in your back pocket as a male, right near your, reproductive organs, and women as well, which is where we put these phones. So, there's a whole host of issues that will start coming up in years to come. About the way we use things.
So ideally you would, I know there are people out there who actually, literally put it on aeroplane mode.
Yes.
Unless they're actually using it at the time, it's always on aeroplane mode.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So the things that we can do to have it, if you really don't want to switch it into aeroplane mode, use your speaker, use some, air tube earpieces.
Yeah.
Pop it on a bench, talk at a distance, but aeroplane mode is definitely the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to really ensure also when it is in aeroplane mode, I might send you a picture of it. That might be good to put in your show notes.
Yep.
If you've still got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth switched on in your settings, it's still going to be on even if it's in aeroplane mode. You want to ensure that they are always off.
Right, okay. So even the Bluetooth has got to be, right, okay, I didn't know that.
Bluetooth is probably, how do I put it without being alarmist? It's quite, Bluetooth pulses. So we can't feel it, but there's a pulse being emitted by a Bluetooth that your body's absorbing. Like it's difficult because it's not seen and we can't feel it, so people don't realise the dangers. But yeah, they should be off. Bluetooth should be off. Wi-Fi should be off.
Okay.
Unless you need to connect.
Yep.
And pop it in aeroplane mode.
Yeah.
As long as it's away from you. So what I do is I don't turn my phone off. I've got a business, I've got children, I've got a partner who's, always calling. So I have it in the room, but it's just away. It's sort of over on the bench over there.
Yeah.
When it rings, I hear it.
And you can go to it.
You can go take your calls.
So really it's the further away from you that it is, the better. Yeah. Okay.
So that's with your phones. They should never be in the bedroom at night. That's another big no-no.
That is another thing that I always say, yeah. Absolutely.
Because most people, and I was one of them until I learnt this, I would use it as my alarm.
Yeah.
But it was never in aeroplane mode, so you don't realise that. But you can have it in aeroplane mode on your bedside table, still use it as an alarm, but provided it's not charging, because then it will give off different fields, because then you're talking electric and magnetic fields.
Right, okay.
Which is a whole different thing. So what I now do is I charge my phone during the day as opposed to night.
Overnight, right.
So it's just little habit changes.
Yep.
It's not hard, it's just changing habits slowly that we can make these things safer for us. So I actually have my iPad. I don't bring the phone in, but I have an iPad that's just solely always on aeroplane mode, and that's my alarm. It just sits there, and it's safe. So when I need to charge it, I just whack it on charge during the day when I'm not sleeping, and I'm nowhere near it, so it becomes safe.
Or just buy an alarm clock, people, a little one with a battery in it.
Yes, not digital, because they are also an issue.
Yeah.
Just a little alarm clock.
If we move then on to just other general electrical appliances, what is the issue with that and what's the safest way to use them?
So alarm clocks are the next one that we find, because you've got them right near your head. And the easy swap for that is just a battery clock, like you just said. And they're only about $20 odd. Yeah. Pretty cheap.
I got one in an op shop actually. It was probably $2.
Brilliant, whatever works. So in your bedroom, really, what we want and what we teach as building biologists is, one of the issues is, you will know with your health background, sleep is really important.
Yes.
So we want 8 hours or thereabouts. If you don't need 8 hours, that's fine.
But can you?
Yeah, exactly. But that sleep period is where your body needs to restore and regenerate.
Yep.
And if we're being bombarded with all of these frequencies, this is the issue that we're finding. So you would want to create a sleep sanctuary. So your room is for sleep and sleep alone. So no digital devices in there is what we suggest. And so just your wind-up clock, no mobile phone, just really simple. So that's really, really vitally important. I think sleep is the critical one. And that means when you look at the rest of the house, most people have a router that has a Wi-Fi component.
Yep.
That should be switched off at night.
Yep.
So a lot of people will just tend to put it on a timer, just like the Christmas tree timers. Switch it off at 10:30, like it goes off automatically, so you don't have to remember to do that. Switches off at say 10:30 or 11, whenever you go to bed. Timer would switch it off.
Yep.
And then if you get up at 5:30 or 6, or just have the timer switch it back on, so you've had restorative sleep without the Wi-Fi. You don't need it while you're sleeping.
Yeah, you don't.
So we just don't think of these things because we don't realise that they are harmful. But that's probably really important. So that would be after the mobile phone, and the alarm clock would be the
Wi-Fi.
router. Yeah, the Wi-Fi.
What about little lights next to your bed?
They don't give off the same frequencies as mobile phones.
Yep.
But they've got electric and magnetic fields.
Yep.
So it means that there's electricity running through the walls, and it's giving off magnetic fields as well. So if you read like I do, it's kind of, it needs to be a bit of a risk management sort of a scenario as well. Well, I've eliminated everything out of my bedroom that I possibly could. I know these are an issue, so I use it to read, and then I move it to the edge of my bedside table, so as far away from me as possible when I go to bed. So it's about saying, well, I still need to live my life and be practical, so I can't completely live in a tent out in the bush or anything.
Yeah.
So, yes, any electrical devices should be. Magnetic field will come out 1.5 metres.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's a long way.
Yeah, it is. So if you can, mine are plugged in right behind my bedside table, so it's a bit of a mission
effort to pull it
out.
out.
A mission to get to them every night.
Yeah.
But some people may have the plug on the side, and if they don't mind, just go and switch off the plug and pull it out of the wall. Then there is nothing coming off that. It becomes safe.
Yeah.
So it's just with a little bit of education and understanding, you can actually still use all these things and be safe.
And the risk of the magnetic field is for the brain as well?
Magnetic fields, in 1979, there was a study done. This is before freedom of information and all of that stuff, before they, you couldn't get your hands on records. They were done by a couple of, one of them was an
epidemiologist.
Yes, thank you. I can never say that word. And the other one was, I believe, a scientist or an engineer. Anyway, Wertheimer and Leaper. And it's quite a well-known study, and I can give you a link to it if anyone is interested in reading it. But what they found was, with the high voltage transmission lines that we see that, carry, the big ones, not our distribution lines that are outside our houses, but the ones that carry all the electricity, sort of they look like the transformers.
Yes.
So what they found was that children that lived under those high voltage transmission lines for the first 15 years of their life had a greater, where the magnetic field was measured at 4 milligauss and above. And they are because there's such a concentration under those towers. They had a 50% increased risk of contracting leukemia. And that just highlighted since, the early 80s now, that children and magnetic fields,
are not friends.
They do a lot of damage. They do damage to us. Wi-Fi is the greater issue at the moment. So
it's really a whole body risk. It's not just the brain that may be at risk health-wise from electromagnetic fields.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But in general, they do have effects on us. It all has effects. And the way we live, we now have radio frequencies, so RF, which is your phones and your Wi-Fi, and they're the radio frequencies. Then you have magnetic fields and electric fields that come from electrical appliances that give off two fields. And which field depends on whether it's on or off, if it's in use or not, as to whether you have an electric and a magnetic field.
Okay.
So we have a lot more frequencies that we're exposed to.
That are around us all the time.
It's becoming a synergistic effect. So it's not just one frequency, it's three frequencies that we're being, assaulted with, really. And it's long term, it's 24/7 because it is inside our homes and it's in a close field to our bodies. So this is where making it safer. With my internet, I got rid of my Wi-Fi and I had my non-believer son help me because he's an IT boy. But he humoured me and I said to him, I don't want Wi-Fi. So he went and found me a router that is hardwired. Now, the downside is I have cables running along the house. I've got Ethernet cables, but I don't have Wi-Fi bombarding me during the day. But he did buy me a separate Wi-Fi component so that if something happens or I can't run a cable or whatever, or there's a study group happening and we don't have, 8 cables, we can switch the Wi-Fi on for an hour or two. And we do. But it's unplugged and it doesn't emit any of the time. So I still have Wi-Fi, but I choose when I use it. So really that's what I kind of try and educate people with, is that we can have them and use them safely. Things like, now jumping back into a magnetic field, an appliance, one that comes to mind is an induction stove, which a lot of people have. And that emits enormously high magnetic fields. So you can't kind of say, well, don't have one if that's what you want to use. But the way you would mitigate that would be, well, when you're cooking, don't stand in front of it for an hour. if you're cooking something like, I don't know, casserole, you'll come and go, but as long as you're away from it, it's the amount of time you spend in the field. So if you can remove yourself from the field, that's where it becomes safer.
And so at least 1.5 meters away from that is removing yourself from the field. Okay.
Yeah. Roughly, the rule of thumb is 1.5 meters for those fields.
And so, you know, like lights and, I mean, we have so many little appliances, hair dryers, all your little cooking, you know, your food processor and all that sort of stuff. Is it simply a matter of obviously turning them off when you're not using them?
Correct.
But is it better to turn them off at the power point? Do you need to actually pull them out of the power point?
It would be more ideal if you could.
Right.
Pull them out of the power point. But as long as they're off is a good start. But yes, definitely unplugging them would be the best case scenario, because then you've eliminated completely any fields.
The connection. Okay. Right. I didn't know that about pulling it out. All right.
So we think we're switching them off, they're okay, but you actually need to pull it out because there's still a connection to the electricity. So it is still connected. It's just not giving off the magnetic field at that stage.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then, so I guess if we can talk about some other common things in the house. So we have spoken about mould. I guess obviously opening your windows and doors is a great way to remediate that. And anything else that we can do that's simple other than...
Eliminate chemicals. So I don't know, probably most of your listeners will be on that journey. But
hopefully, yes.
Hopefully.
If they're
but
listening.
If they're not, household products and personal care products are two huge areas. So the more we can reduce our exposure to man-made chemicals, the better. When I first eliminated air fresheners, I went to essential oils. Now, essential oils, while natural, can be really potent because they are still a chemical compound.
From
just
a plant.
Because, yes, exactly. So just because they're natural, it doesn't mean they won't do harm. They will. You've got to be cautious with everything. But we can find safer swaps. So if you're using a diffuser, for example, and you're in a sealed room, you're putting moisture into the air. So you want to have your windows open, even if it's sort of just that much. You just need a little bit of ventilation to dilute and bring your relative humidity down in the room. So you want to dilute the air and make it safe. Same when you're cooking, open your doors and windows or a door, a window, even if it's a little bit. It will help to dilute the air. You know, I often say to people, when you get up in the morning and you kind of flip your sheets over, air out your bed for a few minutes while you're in the bathroom. Give it 5 minutes, open a window, let some air flow through. And then you've diluted that air from the night before that you've been breathing. Because that in itself creates indoor air quality issues because of, you know,
carbon dioxide.
What we emit.
And what about then having plants indoors? Is that a recommendation, or do they have mould issues and things?
They do have a number of issues, and I know Nicole, for one, recommends that you don't put them in the bedroom because of the carbon dioxide thing. People who have mould sensitivities could be, and generally are, affected by the soil. And you're putting water in there to water the plants. So you're putting moisture into the soil and into the air. So you want to be careful that you're not overloading your indoor air and raising your relative humidity levels, because that's what the moisture... So for mould to occur, we need two things. We need high relative humidity, over 60%, and you need a heavy dust load, which is the food.
And for the mould,
For the mould, So that's how you get mould. So if you can manage your relative humidity with a hygrometer, really cheap tool from Jaycar, about $25. Just always keep an eye on the relative humidity, and if it starts to creep up, depending on the weather outside, it'll tell you. Just pop a window open and you'll watch that percentage decrease. So they're really easy, simple fixes once you know how to manage your environment, that you can keep it fairly safe.
And keep dusting is the other tip.
Definitely. because the more we reduce that dust load, because it's the dust that carries a lot of the allergens.
Yeah.
So people who have allergies generally won't have carpet because there's a lot that, the carpet holds. It's like a sink.
Yeah.
So it'll actually hold on to stuff.
Yeah.
So, dust load is really important.
And anything else then so I'll just briefly mention as well in regards to personal care and cleaning products, it's something that we covered extensively in our low tox course, and it's something that I cover extensively in my Nourish and Heal the Whole You course, and is covered more briefly in my 7 ways to get your energy back in 1 month course, which anybody can do anytime. It's all online now, that little course. But if you want to delve into a lot of detail and understand the exact issues, what exactly each of the chemicals are doing potentially to your body that are found in all these really common things that most people have in their homes, to do their cleaning, to do their laundry, to look after their themselves, their skin, their hair care, makeup, then I do delve into that in a great deal of depth in the Nourish and Heal the Whole You program. So if anybody's interested in learning about that, it is there on offer for you. And also we probably should mention Alex Stewart does have her Go Low Tox course. I think she only does it twice a year, yeah. So probably you'd need to wait a few months to do the next intake of that, because I think there's one just finishing again. But that's a really good resource as well that you can do. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to make the swaps once you get into the habit and you actually become quite strict about what you will and won't use, and especially in regards to things that we're using that we're going to put into our bodies, so how you're washing your dishes, how your cooking utensils, and also what you're putting on your bodies in regards to makeup and skincare and stuff are the really super important ones, because they're directly in contact with your skin, or in fact going into your body. So really important to get on top of that if you really want to be as well as you can be. So I'm just having a look at all the things we wanted to cover. Did you want to talk about water as well?
Water is important, and the other thing that I haven't touched on is something that we do in our business. I set up a division of our business is to look at split system air conditioners.
Yes, I was going to bring that up, yes, because that's another really big thing.
It is, and something I did not know until Nicole pushed us into setting up this part of our business, because nobody really quite understands it. So just because of the nature of the way a split system works, there's a lot of moisture, very high relative humidity within the unit, because hot and cold and sort of behind the condenser is where a lot of this happens, and there's a heavy dust load because we're not taught to maintain them. So many units are never cleaned and they have mould. And this becomes an indoor air quality issue, because that is blowing into your environment, and then we're breathing mould spores. So, and while most of us are not affected by it, and may never be, there are a lot of people that are, and especially if you've got allergies, asthma, sickly children, you've got anything going on, you're going to be affected by it.
So it's nearly 25% of the population, I think it's 24, actually genetically cannot deal with mould, with the mycotoxins from mould. So that's a quarter of the population. It's amazing.
It really is. So that's one of the things that we do within our business. But on the subject of mould and cleaning, I may mention, though, this is one of the issues that I combat a lot. People use bleach. Please don't use bleach on mould. There's a misconception out there that the bleach will kill the mould. It doesn't. The bleach, in fact, it's like getting a white out and whiting it out. It's still there underneath the bleach. It just looks better, but it's still there. But the danger comes from when you put bleach on the spores. What you're doing is they're looking at it going, they're trying to kill us, so we're going to fight back. They don't want to die. So what they do is they release MVOCs. So they release a very nasty chemical reaction, and that is what people react to. So when you actually put bleach on mould, you're actually making the mould a lot worse. It becomes toxic.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues around mould. And there is a difference between moulds. There is mould that you get in your shower behind your silicone, and that's going to be natural. That comes from moisture and, you know, the nature of bathrooms and whatnot. But when you've got mould on your walls or on your ceilings, that's a real water issue. So you've either got very high humidity or you've got a water leak coming from somewhere that needs to be investigated. You need to address the root cause of that. But yeah, I just wanted to mention, please don't use bleach on mould.
So what would you recommend people do use?
We, as a business, use warm soapy water and scrub down our showers just with a little scourer pad or some scourer brushes, and we scrub because unfortunately Easy Off BAM and all these, they don't work. None of this stuff works. We've got to go back to basics. And if you maintain your bathroom, you need to get rid of the soap scum and, you know, the body fats and oils. And
which are what the mould is going to feed on. Yeah.
There's food there. So you want to wash that down. And the key to controlling mould is always control the moisture.
Yeah.
So after you've had a shower, what we do and what we give our clients and have educated them to do is, you know, the little squeegees that you clean glass with.
Yeah, like your
windscreen.
car. Yeah.
So we have hooks in the showers and we have a little squeegee, just tiny little squeegees. The Full Circle brand is really great because they're ethical and sustainable. And that's what we use. So you have a squeegee and you squeegee down your tiles and your glass so you get all that water off the walls. And then you just squeegee the base bits into the drain.
Yep.
Just use your microfiber cloth to just dry it off.
Yep.
And you'll get longevity out of the amount of times you have to clean your shower, because if you're leaving the water there, water has minerals in it, and it's the minerals that mark and streak when they dry.
Okay.
So if you're drying that off, then you're actually eliminating the chance for these marks.
Yeah. So it'll look a lot cleaner. It will be a lot cleaner and a lot less mouldy.
Yeah. And it'll give you the best chance at, you know, not getting mould issues in there. It's pretty simple. It's a habit. Yeah, you have to spend a few minutes after your shower just squeegeeing it down quickly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a perfect, you know.
It's just removing most of the moisture.
Most of the moisture, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And in regards to the split systems, I'm just looking at the one up there. So people can certainly clean the dust off them if they learn to open them up and take those filtering things out.
Yes. And even across the top of the unit, you'll notice nobody ever dusts across the top.
Yeah.
Just even with your vacuum cleaner, once every few months, you know, put the round brush on it and just vacuum the dust off.
Okay.
You know, off the casing of the unit, because any dust that you can eliminate is less food for mould.
For mould, yeah. Okay.
So just keeping a control of your dust load throughout your house will prevent a lot of things.
And then in regards to the specialist cleaning that your business does, so how often should they be cleaned using that kind of process?
It's probably every 12 months, but if they've maintained the dust load and the pre-filters, which are the, you know, the filters that you're talking about when you open the lid, the filters that you pull down, and you've vacuumed a lot of it and you've really reduced your dust load, you could probably stretch it 18 months, 2 years, depending on your usage. Yeah. Some people use it heating and cooling year round. Yeah. So obviously they should be cleaning it at least once a year. If you only use it on really hot days or really cold days, it might go a couple of years. Yeah, okay. So it's not a cheap process. There's a lot of work involved to basically strip down that unit, hang a bag, a catchment bag, and we pressure wash the unit. Wow, okay. So it is actually pressure washed. All the pieces are taken outside, washed down, and then brought back in and it's dried off for moisture and then reassembled. So that could be a 3-hour process.
Yeah, I imagine. Per one.
Yeah, per one. Wow. So it's full on. Yeah. It's not remediation, but it's kind of in between just a fluff clean and a remediation, more down the remediation end. So it'll definitely eliminate a lot of mould.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. What else? Is there anything
Water.
else we didn't
You did
cover?
ask
Oh,
me
yes,
about
water.
water.
Yes.
From both of our studies, we both know that filtering your water is really important.
Yep.
And I think most people think they're drinking water, so they're doing really well. But what we don't know is there are a lot of chemicals added into the water to disinfect it at the treatment plant. And then along the way, we have, through the distribution system, not all the pipes are safe. We still have asbestos pipes, there'll be metal pipes, there'll be plastic pipes, and there is no map telling you what your water picks up on the way through the distribution system till it gets to your house.
Yep.
There could be lead, there's a lot of heavy metals, pesticides.
Yep.
So there's, apart from fluoride and chlorine, and so there's a hell of a lot of stuff in the water. So we always recommend to filter your water in some way. And, you know, even a basic water bottle with a charcoal filter won't take out a lot, but it'll take out some. You know, eliminating any of the pesticides and chemicals and heavy metals is going to be better for you than not. So whatever you can afford, if it's only a $30 jug or a bottle with a charcoal stick in it, start with that. Start where you can, and then kind of work your way towards it. There are lots of benchtop units, like Zazen is one that comes to mind. I think Waters do.
Waters Co.
Do benchtop units.
Yeah, they do. The Southern Cross, that's the one I've got,
that's
which
another
I love.
one. Yeah, and they're beautiful because they're ceramic.
They look really nice.
They're gorgeous.
And your water tastes so much better.
You can notice the difference, So anything you can, depending on your budget and where you're at, but start somewhere and slowly, once you get comfortable with your little bottle, then maybe start thinking about a benchtop unit if you don't want to start there, save towards that. And then, but yeah, definitely filtering your water.
And you can get a whole house filtration system, which obviously is going to be expensive and not something you would do if you're renting.
Correct.
Like you and I both are, but it's something to think about if you own your own home, or certainly if you're building a new home or renovating. Yeah.
It's not just the water we drink, it's also we're showering.
Correct, yeah.
And the chlorine in the showers is quite dangerous. So what I've done is I have, the hosey things.
Yep.
So I'm lucky enough that I have that where I'm renting, and I've just bought one that has a filter in the sort of the head bit that you use on that hose.
Yeah.
And all I did was untwist the hose that was there and twisted my filtered hose in, so now I shower in filtered water. Yeah. And then when I leave, I'll just put their one back.
Yeah.
So really I haven't tampered with the system. It's just in the shower itself, just that little nut thing that you unscrew. So, and that's an easy fix.
And they're really cheap, aren't they?
About $150 or $180. It's a very low price to pay
for clean water going on your skin at least once a day. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So lots of little things that you can do. It's very overwhelming when you first come across it. And what I always teach is don't look at the big picture. Let's just tackle one thing at a time. Yep. So where do you want to start? Let's just make a list. And I always say one swap a week. And over the course of a year, you've made 52 swaps. You will have no idea how much healthier you'll feel. Yeah. And you've done it with ease. One thing a week's manageable.
It is, yeah. So that's a great tip. One swap a week. Yeah. And also, I just always like to say to people to not become stressed and overwhelmed by all this stuff, and worrying about, oh my goodness, all these things that potentially I'm doing to my kids or whatever because I don't filter the water, and the stress that you're going to feel as a result of that kind of worry is worse than whatever it is that's in your environment that now you know, and now you can change it. So just relax and go with the one change, one swap a week, and you will get there to a beautiful, healthy environment and surroundings. Anything else we haven't covered other than your podcast? I'd love you to just quickly tell people what that's about, and where they can find it.
Sure. So Tammy, Simone and I all met while we were studying and realised that there needs to be some form of education out there, that a lot of people are unaware of the dangers of a lot of things or the issues. So we decided to set up a podcast just before COVID, and then had to work out how to, like everybody,
do it all
pivot.
on Zoom.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've had some really interesting people. So we look at it as sharing the knowledge, our combined knowledge and wisdom. So we hope there's wisdom in there, but sharing it with everybody. And we're interviewing people we know or people we love and admire, and relating it back into how it contributes to the way we live and how we live. And, you know, while as building biologists we all talk about the environment, there's also our internal environment, which you talk about.
Yeah.
So we did a great podcast. Tammy and I interviewed Elena Brower yesterday, who is a yoga instructor and one of the essential oil leaders in doTERRA. But Elena has had a fascinating journey, and, you know, just talking to her about really the way she lives, even just during that interview, she was so calm that we left the interview really calm. And that's really important, as you just said.
And that's the energy that you're putting out into your environment, that she's obviously put out, you've absorbed, and you go on and put that out, and it all has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, so she was really interesting, and we learned from our guests.
And it's called, again,
Healthier Homes and Living.
Healthier Homes and Living, and your podcast is on all the platforms as well, isn't it?
iTunes and all of the majors, Spotify, all of that.
Yeah, okay. And then what about for yourself, for Clean Fresh Group? You do, it's commercial cleaning now, is that right?
Yes,
and
is.
The split system.
Split system.
So if people need that kind of service, what's the best way for them to find you?
We're on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and I can give you our details, email.
You've got address. A website.
Yes.
Yeah. So
cleanfreshgroup.com.
We'll have all that in the notes, and people can find you.
Thank you.
I would really love to thank you. It's been so nice to talk and be able to do it in person, and have somebody who's just so closely aligned with all the work that I do and the message that I'm trying to get out there. And I always think people are more likely to pay attention the more people are saying these things to them. So
Correct.
Really great.
Thank you for having me, letting me talk.
My pleasure.
And I hope I haven't scared everyone. There's nothing to be scared of. I think it's just we don't know what we don't know. I could kick myself for all the things I've done, but it's not going to get us anywhere. So I think you start where you are and just start making small changes. Take on Arwen's program, which is amazing, and start with what you can cope with and what's easy.
And that's right. Because if it's not easy, you're not going to keep doing it. So so true. So thank you.